We are here with the three candidates for circuit judge in the 18th Judicial Circuit, which covers Seminole and Brevard counties. And this is Group 19. Thank you all for coming in today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Right. If you've seen any of these interviews that are now posted, you know that we have a couple of questions that we start each of these interviews with, just to get them out of the way. And the first question is, have you ever been arrested? And we'll start at this end of the table and go to the other.
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. And then we'll start at this end. Have you ever declared bankruptcy?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. Good to have that done. Let's start out with why you're running for judge. Let's start with Mr. Krause.
I'm running for judge because I think I'm the best candidate in this group. Specifically, I believe it's an opportunity for me to again serve my community. Most people don't know this, was a firefighter growing up and volunteer firefighter in a town that I grew up in. Many of the members of that unit that I was in went on to become firefighters and police officers in the city of New York. And I had lost men that I worked with and women that I worked with in 9/11. And after 9/11, I decided again it was time to serve my community. I ran briefly in 2006 before it became an appointment, and did not seek the appointment, and got my house in order again and decided that in 2014 it was my turn to again serve my community. I think I owe a debt to this community in this country, and by my service as a judge, I think I can repay that debt.
Thank you. Ms. Goerner.
I went to law school because I wanted to make sure that I was never taken advantage of by not knowing the law and knowing my rights. And from there I decided, and I knew that I wanted to be a prosecutor. And through my career, I've served over 18 years as an attorney, first as a prosecutor, and then going out into private practice on my own and serving the entire Central Florida community. I want to continue that service on the bench. And I think coming from both sides, having been a prosecutor, having been a defense attorney, having seen all aspects, so many aspects of the law, that I would be best served. A lot of times I feel like I'm stuck in the middle, and that's what judges are. They're stuck in the middle. And I feel like I'm really equipped at this point in my career to do that. And so I just want to continue my service and my commitment to the community as a judge.
Thank you. Ms. Stacy.
Well, I too have a desire to serve, but having been in the courtroom and seeing judges do it well and maybe some that don't do it as well, I've seen judges shut down a witness with a look of an eye, a tone of a voice, and I want to create an efficient and effective courtroom environment where we can seek the truth and administer justice. And so I feel that I have the personal qualities as well as the experience to create a courtroom atmosphere where we can really find out the truth from and administer justice.
I'm going to follow up on the experience question because it's been reported that you've never had any jury trials before. How would that voters not consider that to be a gap in your qualifications for this position?
Well, I looked at the Brevard Clerk of the Court website and looked at the number of cases that were concluded last year. Only 16% of the cases in the Brevard County court system were felony cases, okay? And those are the cases predominantly that would be jury trials. I've also spoken to former Chief Judge Clayton Simmons about his experience. He had one jury trial before he went on the bench, and he was considered to be one of the best criminal judges in Seminole County, at least in my opinion, and I think in many other opinions. So the statistics and experience has shown that a civil litigation attorney has had an easier time acclimating to the criminal bench than a criminal defense attorney or a prosecutor acclimating to the civil bench. So I've had multiple trials. I've had complex business litigation trials. I'm not sure if my opponents have had that, but I've represented Daytona Beach Shores. I've represented Seminole State College. I've represented Chantis Construction, Geneva Construction, all at trial. So the diversity in my ability, the 21 different practice areas, my ability to learn and keep learning and not just get stuck in one area of the law, I think makes me uniquely qualified to be a judge.
And let me jump in just quickly.
Sure.
I don't want to make it appear that we're piling on you, Miss Stacy, but
Sure.
You talked about why you want to be a judge.
Yes, sir.
And you've spent quite a bit of money to fulfill that goal. Why are you investing so much money in being a judge?
Well, one of the things that the Sentinel hadn't reported was that I started this campaign in March of 2013. I started very early. There were candidates that jumped in Brevard County, and the early bird gets the worm. Brevard County is 87 miles long. They have 14 people at one time running for their county commission. So, we really needed to get out there. Seminole County trails a little bit behind in the political activism. Brevard County, we go out there and boy, they've got signs everywhere, and they've started their campaigning really, really early. So I was following the lead of Brevard County, not wanting to get behind and showing the voters that I really want to be their judge. I was willing to go out there. I drive a 2004 truck with a duct tape on it. I mean, I'm not a rich person, but this is something I really want to do. This is something that I think Seminole County could benefit from my experiences. I'm a former human resource director. I've been in education. I've got a very worldly, diverse experience, and I feel that that is very much needed right now in the Seminole County bench.
Ken, judicial temperament is very, very important. What sort of judicial temperament would you bring if you were elected, and do you have any role models as judges who you look to as in that regard? Mr. Krause, we'll start with you.
I have, and I'll take the second part of the question first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I have two role models. My first role model is the judge that I clerked for in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, Emmett R. Cox, who's twice appointed by Ronald Reagan. He taught me what a judge is supposed to do, how a judge is supposed to act. We sat as a district court, and I watched him conduct trials. And I watched him in oral argument and how he handled himself when raising questions, difficult questions to attorneys. I believe that experience has taught me how to have the judicial temperament. He believed that you should always be respectful of people, no matter what the circumstance as a judge, and that a lot of times a judge has to do unpleasant things to people. But he reminded us that when you do something like that, it always doesn't cost you any more to do it nicely and to remain professional and pleasant to somebody. And I believe that I have those judicial temperaments. I've been a high school referee, and I've also been a mediator. What I've taken out of those is that I have the temperament to be a judge. As a mediator, and it's not a judicial role, you're not imposing anything, you're listening. And what you do is you listen to what's important to the parties and try to help them solve their problems among themselves. And that is a skill to learn what is important to somebody in deciding cases and how to make resolutions that are the best for the parties themselves. The other person that I would say I would emulate would be in Seminole County, Vernon Mize, a great judge that I think treated people fairly, with decorum, and I think that's what I will bring to the Seminole County bench if elected.
Well, I'll start with my role models. When I first started at the state attorney's office in 1995, I was a certified legal intern before I took the bar exam. And the very first judge I had cases in front of was Marlene Alva. And so I would look to her first as a person, as a role model, because what I liked about her is her even-keeled temperament, her listening to both sides and making a ruling. And even if she ruled against you, you couldn't be upset about it because she explained why. And I think one of the qualities I would take to the bench is educating the litigants about why I'm making a ruling And so whether that ruling is in their favor or they're not, they'll at least understand it. The second person I would point to would be Judge Kenneth Lester. I've handled a lot of cases in front of Judge Lester, and he's very knowledgeable. He's very, again, even-tempered, very even-keeled. He's very fair to both sides, and I think he's been one of the top judges in Seminole County repeatedly in terms of the judicial reviews by the attorneys. What I like about Judge Lester, in addition to all of those things, is that you can get him reversed, and he's still not going to be mad at you. He's not going to take it personal. And a judge should never take it personal. You know, they're making their call based on what the arguments of the attorneys are, and sometimes they get it wrong, but don't take it personal. So those are things that I'll bring to the bench, is my knowledge, even-keeled temper, making sure you give everybody an equal opportunity to argue their side of the case fully, and then I'll explain the reason for my ruling.
Stacy.
I think Judge John Antone has done a fabulous job. I mean, he's held circuit court positions, he's been a federal judge, and I think he's reasoned, I think he's professional, inside the courtroom and outside the courtroom, and I think that's very, very important, because the society looks to the judges to conduct themselves in a manner that the rest of society can emulate. I think Phil Archer said it best when he said, you know, there's no doubt that I have experience, when he endorsed me, but what he said was it was my demeanor, my integrity, and my professionalism that put me over the top. And our state attorney, Phil Archer, has worked with, well, he knows all three of us, and so I felt very, very encouraged by that endorsement.
Do you guys think that the court system does a good job of delivering equal justice for all, regardless of race, creed, gender, or sexual orientation? And I'll start with Mr. Krause.
I've struggled with this question, and I know I've watched the interviews before, and I would have to say no, it doesn't. In a specific area that I deal with is in family law. I think that what I've seen in over 24 years of experience is that people, at least in the family law area, who are the primary breadwinners, wage earners, have an advantage over the other party. And usually it's men versus women. And what I've seen is they use that advantage to force the other party not to have the ability to hire a lawyer, hire a good lawyer, to get the experts that they need to prove their case in court. And it's troubling. I've had the pleasure of representing a number of people in family law, and I find that one of the things that is troubling to me is that there have been circumstances whereby and usually, like I said, it's the wife, is being strung out, is being forced to make hard decisions about how to feed her family when the other side is not providing support, knowing that it's going to take, and one of the problems is it's going to take 6-8 months to get a temporary relief hearing before that money will start to flow. I've been in situations that, and I've made choices that, I will refund some of the retainer that I've gotten because I know this person wasn't going to be able to feed their family unless I did that. And I've not billed these individuals as much as I should. Why? Because I'm not going to leave them in the lurch. I'm not going to let them be left in the cold so that they don't get the justice they want, they deserve or are entitled to. I think that, there are other areas in criminal law. I think that people that have the money to hire experts are more likely to get a more favorable result than those that aren't. And I think that our justice system needs to be fully funded, both with judges and public defenders and state attorneys, so that we can strive to what this great country is about, equal justice for all under the law. It troubles me that people will use the monetary aspect of it to gain an advantage.
Saw you shaking your head, Ms. Goerner.
I agree with everything that Mr. Krause said, and I have had that experience as well where, I'm a board-certified criminal trial expert. I'm the only candidate in this race that's board-certified as an expert in any area of law. But as a board-certified criminal trial expert, I can charge a lot for my cases that I handle because I'm an expert in the field. I'm only one of 387 people that's an expert in the field, but I don't charge a lot to my clients because I work with them on a payment plan just like everybody else, because I think they deserve the best service at an affordable rate. And I do see disparity in the legal system between people who are rich and people who are not so rich, people who are minorities and people who are not minorities. And I think the Sentinel covered a case I had a while back with the DUI homicide in a SUV, between an SUV and a motorcycle. Client was a Caucasian male with very little money, so I didn't charge him what any other defense attorney would have charged him for that case. And we hired an expert. The expert did the case for us for $1,000. He could have charged a whole lot more, and most experts would have charged a whole lot more. But the thing is, my client deserved the best defense, and that's what he got. Even though he was convicted at trial, we got the judge reversed. And the judge reversed it back to what I argued for in the first place. And then when we came back for the re-sentence and the remand, the judge made another decision, which we had to appeal again, and I got the judge reversed again. You know, who gets a judge reversed twice in the same case and doesn't charge 50 grand for it? So that's the kind of thing. I think the system needs to be fixed in the regard to make sure that all litigants are able to, especially in criminal cases, get the best service so that justice can be rendered. That's why we have a lot of these people who are wrongly convicted, and you got the Innocence Project. You know, and I know I'm talking in the context of a criminal case, but it applies across the board, just like Mitch said, for family cases. You know, it's all about the haves and the have-nots. But justice is supposed to be equal for everyone, regardless. And our system does not do enough to go far enough to make sure that that happens.
Stacy, do you concur with your colleagues?
Well, I can't take issue with anything that they've said. What I can say is that I think that there are laws that are in place, and as one of the areas that I practice is employment law, employment discrimination, retaliation. I think the laws are there. What we have to do better is, as a society, as judges and attorneys, we need to do better in utilizing those laws and treating people with dignity and respect. And I think that's really where it comes into play. When you see a judge on the front page of the Orlando Sentinel, it's not because they didn't understand the law. Typically, it's because of something that they've done, from either that was unprofessional, it's a statement that they made, it's the way they made someone feel in court. And that's why it is so important that the personal aspects of every candidate is delved into, that you look at the integrity of the candidates that are before you, the honesty, the personal qualities that they have exhibited throughout their career. Now, I've handled 2 foreclosure cases this year. I didn't charge for either of them. One, I was at a program speaking during the campaign, and someone came in and said, "There's emergency." Well, what kind of emergency for a lawyer at 7 o'clock in the evening? But I went out, and a woman was hyperventilating. Her house was sold that day, and she said, "I made the payments, I readjusted everything. The bank said they were going to dismiss the case, and yet we went on our little phones and looked, and lo and behold, the house had been sold. It was sold wrongfully." I worked all evening. By 10 o'clock the next morning, I had 3 buyers that backed out, gave the home back to the woman, and I did it for free. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. The system failed her, and I was going to make it right. Similarly, I had referred someone to what I would consider a foreclosure expert. I told her, you know, I thought that would be the best person to handle the case. She came back to me and said that she had a satisfaction of mortgage, and the attorney told her that they could sign the house, she could sign the house over to them and make payments on her attorney's fees. So basically, the attorney was going to take her house and charge her for it. Thank God, you know, she came back to me. I said, "You know what? I'll do it. I'll find the time and I'll do it." Because that's why we do this. We go into the law to help people. I've been awarded by the Legal Aid Society 5 years in a row for my service to the indigent. I served on the Legal Aid Board. I have corporate clients, but you know what? I have individuals, some that I charge, some that I don't, some that I do a flat fee. I'm a businesswoman. I look at this and I say, if you have a case and it's a valid case, but it's only worth $500, I'm not going to charge you $1,500 because that's not good for you. That's not what the system is about. So I try to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason.
wanted to follow up on something that Ms. Stacy said with you, Ms. Goerner. That was, I believe she said it was easier for someone who didn't have, for a civil lawyer without criminal experience to go on the bench and learn that area of law than vice versa. Now, you're a criminal lawyer without civil experience, correct?
I have some civil experience, and I think I know where your question is going to go, because I disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the line of where I come from is that people actually think it's the opposite way, that if you have the criminal experience, which involves a whole lot of jury trial experience, that it's easier for you to acclimate civilly. And I think it comes from a combination of a thorough knowledge of the rules of evidence, a thorough knowledge of the rules of procedure, and a thorough knowledge of how trials are conducted. And so in that regard, I would think that it would be much easier to transition to the civil side from the criminal side than vice versa. And, you know, I won't tell you about the personal experiences that I've had with some judges who've gone from civil to criminal, but it's not been my observation and my own personal practice when I see that happening.
So tell me about your civil experience.
I've done some small claims cases. I've done some injunction hearings. I have done some, I do have a couple of family law cases under my belt. I've got a child custody case that's pending. So I do have a little bit of experience in that regard. But at the end of the day, the rules of evidence, Chapter 90 is the same for everybody, regardless of whether it's a criminal case or a civil case or a family law case. Now, I know there are nuances between the different areas of law, especially where it comes to family law and child custody issues. At the end of the day, the judge's job is to make sure that you let both parties, the attorneys, present their case, present the facts, and that you admit the admissible evidence, and that you consider the admissible evidence, that you let the attorneys argue the law, and that you make sure that each side has their fair day in court. It's the judge's job to act as a referee and make the call.
Mr. Krause, your wife, who is a judge, paid a $25,000 fine related to having received $82,000 from you in her campaign. The reporting that I saw on it indicated that the bar was investigating you for that particular circumstance. Is that investigation still ongoing?
That is ongoing, and I'm glad you asked that question. I want to clarify some misstatements and misrepresentations that have been made. There's a Supreme Court opinion in Ray Krause that talks about what happened with my wife. And I'd ask anybody that's interested to actually go read it. And what happened was, during the campaign, I didn't give her $82,000. It's a misstatement, and I need to clarify that. There was a sums probably closer that marital assets were used, probably somewhere between $50,000 and $52,000. Marital assets. The Supreme Court opinion talks about that. They acknowledge it was marital assets. This is money that I had received during the term of our marriage, a marital asset. It may have been, in our banking practice, was that we didn't have joint accounts for whatever reason, whether it was religious or accounting or personal. That money was a marital asset. The Supreme Court acknowledges it. What they differ with us is they determined that because it was held at some point in time in an account solely held by myself, that it was improper for her to use that money. Now, what's interesting is that, and the Supreme Court has acknowledged this, had it been taken that money and put it into a joint account solely funded by myself, she would have been able to use it. We didn't think that our banking practices were going to become an issue. We didn't try to hide anything. This is money that I earned during the term of our marriage, that she was rightfully, under Florida law, would have been rightfully to use. And so there's been a lot of misquotes, misrepresentations, and it's unfortunate because, you know, the other day I had my daughter come to me, a 5-year-old daughter, Catherine, come to me, and she was hysterical. And I said, well, what's the matter? And I said, she goes, am I going to jail? And I said, why? She said, well, I heard our family broke the law. Our family broke the law. And I said, Catherine, we didn't. It's an accounting issue. We didn't break the law. You're not going to go to jail. And I think that's that kind of misrepresentations that are giving this race some problems. If you go look at the opinion, it's clear. It's marital assets. We didn't think we were doing anything wrong because they were marital assets. I've been a divorce lawyer for 24 years, almost 24 years. The money that I earned was a marital asset. She has as much right to it as I. And to say that, well, it would have been okay if you had just put it into a joint bank account and she could have taken it out, seems kind of hyper-technical.
I think one of the aspects of this case, or one of the details that might lead people to draw conclusions, is the fact that your wife paid a $25,000 fine for this. Sounds to me like, from what you're saying, that she might have had grounds to contest that.
She did. And now, if you read the opinion, there were two other issues that she had that didn't involve me whatsoever. One of them dealt with, she went to an event that historically Seminole County candidates had gone to. Unfortunately, it came out during that term that she wasn't supposed to have gone, and other candidates in that election actually went to that event. The other thing that she had done improperly early in the campaign is some of her campaign material early on didn't have the word "for," Deborah Krause for judge, and that was improper, and she corrected it when she found out about it, but there was some materials that went out and some signs that didn't have that. And then, I would imagine, and you can ask her, but my understanding is, and we talked about it, was that those issues were correct. She did do those two issues, and rather than litigate the third issue, which we think ultimately we probably would have prevailed, would have cost us $25,000 to litigate it. We would have been a year-long trial with the JQC. To resolve it, pay the $25,000 fine and let her continue being the great judge in Seminole County that she is. I think you ask people, she's a great judge in Seminole County. She listens to people. She is probably one, if you talk to, and I don't practice in front of her, but this is what people have told me, that she is one of the best judges in Seminole County Court. And she's uniquely suited, I think, for county court.
Stacy,
Yes, sir.
we understand that you recently received a tour of State Attorney Phil Archer's offices. Is that true?
Maybe a year ago, maybe 9 months ago, I did go to see Phil Archer at his office. I've been to the Brevard office as well as the state attorney's office over in Seminole County.
And did you also pass out campaign literature to the employees while you were there?
No, I did not.
Okay. Was this tour itself a violation of the law, or at least the spirit of the law?
No, sir. No, sir. Phil Archer, I knew Phil Archer before he was state attorney. And, I went to go visit him, to talk with him about some issues. I have a current issue that I want to go talk to him about. When you're out on the campaign trail, a lot of people come to you. They tell you about issues. Just recently, someone told me about the cough and cold syrup medicine that people are injecting into their fingers, which are not, that process is not being detected by the current drug testing system. So, that's one issue that, in the next week or so, I might go see Phil Archer about that, just to let him know that, maybe they need to update the drug testing procedures. That's just kind of who I am. I try to take an active approach in everything I do.
Do you think that kind of contact might be more appropriate, say over the telephone, where you're not seen in the prosecutor's office?
Yes, and I might do it that way as well. It's just, with everything that's going on, it just takes some time. Sometimes, you miss the phone calls, and sometimes it's just easier to make an appointment to see somebody, to talk to them. It's right there in the criminal courthouse, so it's pretty easy to do. In the government center in Vieira, everything's all together, so you can hit a lot of birds with one stone.
We've talked about the backgrounds of two of the candidates. I don't think we got much into the kind of cases that you've done as a lawyer, if you want to just
Sure.
fill us in on that.
I have been a practicing lawyer for over 24 years. I started my legal career out of law school, clerking for, as I indicated before, the Honorable Emmett R. Cox, United States Circuit Court Judge for the 11th Circuit. After that, I worked for a law firm downtown, Brown, Kilgore, Shepherd, Perlman and Stamp, doing civil litigation. Represented I didn't represent them, but I, on behalf of the law firm, represented the Osceola County School Board, did school board law when I worked for them. After that, I worked for the state attorney's office doing prosecuting crimes. I then went out on my own with two friends of mine, Dave Webster and current judge Jerry Collins, and we opened up our own practice together. My practice is both criminal and civil. I do, when I say that, I do criminal work, I do family law. A large segment of my practice is family law. I do civil litigation, collections, construction litigation. I've done a number of different areas. I do simple wills for people. I have a wide-ranging practice. Of the candidates, I think I have the most breadth of experience of any of them for the last 24 years. I'm the only candidate that has a substantial practice in family law. And I think that this seat, and I know this seat is a family law seat, family civil, the majority is family law. I think that it is important that whatever person is elected has some type of substantial family law. That's a unique area of the law. There are not jury trials or non-jury trials. The dynamics of family law are very intricate, and I think that unless you've done a substantial amount of work, you're going to be sort of like the deer in the headlights, not knowing who to believe, what is happening. This is something that circuit court and family law, you affect both the litigants, you affect the children's lives for many, many years to come. And so I think you need that experience to get what is the best interest of the children, having done that, been an advocate. I'm a family law mediator, Supreme Court certified family law mediator. I've mediated numerous cases. Listening to the parties about what they want out of their case and get a better understanding of how to accomplish it, helping them to accomplish it. Again, a mediator doesn't impose, not like a judge, but has some facets where you have to listen to the litigants about what is important to them and what they want to see happen, and help them to achieve the results and the best results for them and for the parties. And I've done county civil. I've done small claims. I represent a number of small companies in different matters. Why? Because they know I will charge them a fair rate for the services that I do, and mainly it's $2,500 on an air conditioning company's trying to get from a restaurant that they fix their air conditioning. Well, Gray Robinson is going to charge them $5,000 retainer, or Holland and Knight is going to charge them $15,000. Not to pick on those two law firms, but they know that they can come to me with their problem, and I'll solve it in a manner that is productive. And I'll give you one little story about that. When I worked at Brown Kilgore, I represented a gentleman who had a timeshare and had a lien against him because he wasn't paying his maintenance fee, and they were moving to foreclose. And he paid the law firm a large sum of money in a retainer that we were billing off of. And I realized as I got into the case that the lien was improper. It had been backdated. This attorney had committed fraud. Okay, and I went to them and I said, look, this is going to be a problem on your case. It's a problem for you. We need to resolve this, and we need to resolve this. And what's going to happen, I suggested, is yes, you can redo it, and you're going to we'll relitigate this after you correct it. Or what we can do is he's going to pay you the money that's owed. You'll get no attorney's fees, and both parties will go. And I bring this story because the law firm that I worked for was upset that I resolved it quickly for my client, and we had to return money.
We are all clearly lawyers, and you care about your clients. So I'd like to give people more insight into you. What sort of community service or volunteer work have you been involved in? And Ms. Goerner, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Ms. Stacy mentioned pro bono service, and I have also been recognized for pro bono service at least 3 times. At least those are the awards I could find when I was looking. I have done quite a bit of pro bono service. I've tried 2 murder cases pro bono. And I worked with Buck Lankner on one of the cases. I worked with Dean Reed on the other case. In addition to that, I've served on the Seminole County Board of Directors for the Seminole County Bar Association. I've been president of the Paul C. Perkins Bar Association and gave away their first scholarship back in 1990-something.
Oh, you don't want to say?
Right, so yes, 1990-something. And I'm active in my church. I sing in the choir. I enjoy feeding the homeless and worked with Hands on Orlando for a number of years, feeding the homeless. I've donated food to the the rescue mission over in Sanford. And those are things that I enjoy doing in my spare time, what little spare time I have. But I think a lot of it also comes from my service as an attorney. You know, I do cases where I don't charge as much, and I've done cases where I don't charge anything. And, you know, and I do this, I've done a bankruptcy case pro bono, you know, and bankruptcy law is one of the things I practice in, which a lot of times deals with mortgage foreclosures, and I'm dealing with that and helping people to be able to restructure their debt. And because thanks to Walter Beninati, life does have a restart button, and so I help them find the restart button. And I deal with short sales in that regard so that they're not stuck with deficiencies or those kinds of issues. So I think in dedicating myself to that work and to the service that I do, there's not much time for anything else, to be honest.
Ms. Stacy, how about you?
I've been involved in the community in a variety of ways. From a professional standpoint, I've been on the board of directors for Central Florida Women Lawyers. I've been on the board of directors for the Seminole County Bar Association, for the Legal Aid Society, for the Farm Workers Ministry in Apopka. I'm also co-chair of my Small Faith Circle at my church, Annunciation. I've volunteered for AVETS, the American Veterans Association out in Brevard County, that support the veterans and their families, the families of the deployed. So I've volunteered there serving meals. Through my Small Faith Circle, we adopt children and families every Christmas and Easter. One year we did the whole, an Easter basket for every family, again for the migrant farm workers out in Apopka. And we were able to provide them Easter baskets and then also Christmas gifts, and just loads and loads. And it's just very, very exciting opportunity. It actually has become the most special part of the Christmas season for me, and I think for my family as we morph. I've been a T-ball coach for the Lake Mary Little League, Bible school teacher, Cub Scout leader. You know, I just try to be very, very involved. I've learned that from my grandmother, who was very involved in the community and kind of followed her lead.
Very impressive.
Thank you.
I think, hopefully I'm as impressive. In my legal career and even beyond, I think that I've done service to community. I've served meals at the Sharing Center in Brevard County. I was on the board of the Seminole County Victim Rights Coalition, which runs the domestic violence shelter, the Safe House in Sanford. I was president of the Safe House. Domestic violence is something that is dear to me in trying to eradicate it. It is a blight on our society. What I've seen in family law cases, we need to break the cycle. And I've done a lot of work with that. I've been a high school referee, not for the money, because I enjoy doing it.
Oh, what sport?
What?
What sport?
Football.
Oh, okay.
I was a back judge for many, many years, and I stopped being a back judge when my wife had children. I haven't done it in about 8 years because I didn't think it was right to leave her alone with the children on a Friday night for several hours and for me to go out. And so I stopped doing that so I could be at home with her and help with the children. I've been a member of Keep Seminole Beautiful, which is an organization that is designed to clean up Seminole County's waterways and the roadsides, picking up trash throughout the county. I've helped out on my daughter's Girl Scout troop because my wife is a judge, is limited in what she can do, and so I filled in that role for her. I am the attorney for the Lake Brantley Rowing Association, which is the team sport for rowing, and have helped them out numerous times throughout my career in resolving problems that they had. I think I've wish I had more time to give back, but I've got 3 small children that take a lot of my time raising them now, but we take the time to give back to the community.
Mr. Krause, your campaign website refers to unqualified, biased judges on the bench. Who do you have in mind?
I think that, and again, I'm not going to name names, but I think that we all know that there are some judges in this country that are biased, that are unqualified to be, and it's to those that I am referring. I think that there are some candidates that are running that are not qualified based on their experience, and I think that I'll leave it at that.
Do you have, when you say in this country, that's a pretty big group. How about in the 18th Circuit? Is there anybody on the bench who you would consider either unqualified or biased?
No.
Huh.
Not in our circuit, no.
Mr. Krause, you, in your most recent anecdote, you were mentioning that one of the lawyers had perpetrated fraud. So I'm wondering, because I guess it's a perfect segue into this question, have any of you ever been disciplined by the bar, or has there been a complaint lodged against you? And I'll start with Mr. Goerner.
I've never been disciplined by the bar. I will say that there have been complaints lodged against you, lodged against me, and I'm going to give you an example. There is a particular defendant in a criminal case who filed a complaint against me, but he confused me with his defense attorney. I was the prosecutor in the case. I got a conviction, and he got the maximum sentence in the case. He filed a bar complaint against me saying that I was ineffective assistance of counsel. So I will tell you that every complaint that has ever been filed has been unfounded because of things like that.
Mr. Krause.
I've never been disciplined by the bar. I do have complaints. I think that in 24 years, especially practicing domestic work, you're going to have complaints, all of them unfounded. Most of them involves the spouses of my clients who felt that I got too good of a deal, or the case was too good for my client, and we're upset about it. I've been accused other times of not doing something what my client wanted when it was totally unethical, and I withdrew, and he grieved me because I wouldn't do what I felt was unethical and improper. And I told the judge, that's why I'm not telling you, but this is what he wants. I'm withdrawing. I need to withdraw because I will not perpetrate a fraud on the court, nor will I engage in this type of conduct, which I know is improper. And none, in the 24 years I've been a lawyer, none of these complaints have ever been pursued.
And last but not least, Ms. Stacy.
I have never been disciplined by the Florida bar, and until this campaign, I was never grieved by an actual client or someone who thought they were a client. During the pendency of this campaign, I had a client that passed away, sadly, and his wife decided not to pursue the case, and then several months later came back and asked me to be her attorney. I told her no, for some very obvious reasons. She was difficult when I had her husband as a client, and then I figured she'd probably continue to be a bit difficult. The Florida bar came back and gave me a letter that read like a job recommendation. They said I was compassionate, I was kind. I refunded all the money that her husband gave me. It was only, I think, $200, but I gave it all back. I tried to do everything I could possibly do for her, but could not take her representation at the time. So cleared of that.
You also mentioned your work with the veteran population.
Yes, sir.
So I'm wondering, do you see a special responsibility for the courts to address crime among veterans and also, I guess, juveniles as well?
Yes, sir. I've mentioned in past interviews about the juvenile system and how we really need to look at the juvenile system and how we can make that better serve the interests of our society. I think it's broken in a lot of ways, and we really need to put a lot of thought into how to make that better serve our society. The Veterans Court has recently been started by one of our county court judges, and he's done a very, very good job. I think it's very important as we see more and more people coming back with post-traumatic stress disorder. These people have served our country. We sent the best of the best, out to war, and when they come back and they're injured and they're not making the best decisions, I think it's extremely important that we consider what they have been through before we start making mental health issues criminal.
Mr. Krause?
I've been an advocate of increasing Veterans Court since I began in this campaign. I think that we are doing a disservice to our veterans, both in the way we're treating their health care, in the way we treat them when they come back. I think we owe these people, these veterans, men and women, more than we're giving them. And I think that we need to address the issues, the drug, substance abuse, alcohol abuse that is occurring. We take fine, healthy young men and women, we train them to be, soldiers, put them in dangerous environments where one wrong step could mean their death, and they witness the death of their buddies, their troop mates, their battalion mates. They don't know, this war that we've fought, for the last 10 years is not like any other war that we've fought, meaning that they can't tell who is the enemy and who isn't. So for them, the only way, and I've talked with veterans about this, the only way for them to survive was everyone was the enemy. And that's the only way they could survive, because they don't know if somebody walking up behind them, some 13-year-old little boy, has 10 pounds of C4 strapped to himself, or there's an IUD in the roadway while they're playing soccer with these children. When they come back, we owe them to help them get back to where they were, both with mental health counseling and also with substance abuse counseling. I think Veterans Court should be expanded, and if elected, I would advocate expanding it to areas that, really need to be looked at different times. It's very limited types of crimes that can go there. I will tell you that I'm in favor, and I've seen this, I saw it on a program where the program put veterans, in Veterans Court living together in a facility. I'd like to see funding for that so that we can put them together so that the veterans themselves can help heal themselves, that it's this camaraderie that they can remember when they were serving. Helps them address their domestic violence issues, their substance abuse, their mental health issues, and helps them to get back out of the system that they're in. Their system is not, as it is now, is not designed to handle these type of problems that we as a society created. I think we need to be a little bit more sympathetic to what they're doing and expand the role of drug courts so that these people can get the help, force them to get the help that they need, so that we can eradicate the substance abuse, the violence. If you look at, I've seen a statistic, it's outrageous, the amount of domestic violence that is occurring in our returning soldiers. It's something that their wives and their spouses and their children had no idea this was going to happen when their loved one returns. So we need to do more to help break the cycle to get them to where they need to be.
Ms. Goerner.
Well, Mitch Krause pretty much said everything, and I do agree with everything that he said. And I think that we need to go further than that, too, when we're talking about addressing mental health issues. So not just with veterans in general, but the court system is also lacking in how it handles mental health cases in general. Not every mental health case is because of drug abuse. There are several mental health cases, and we're criminalizing having a mental health issue, and that needs to be addressed. So I don't mean to get away from the question, but I don't want to be redundant either. And in that regard, the system does need to be fixed. There does need to be special provisions set aside so that these issues can be addressed. And I say that I agree with Mr. Krause and what he said, because I have a lot of friends who served in the military. I went to University of Florida, and a lot of the people I tailgate with were Gator Guard. A lot of them have gone across overseas, and they've served in various wars. The closest thing I have to a brother just retired from the Army after 30 years of service. He's a major. And so I understand these issues, and I see these issues, and they do need to be addressed. And I think the expansion of the Veterans Court would definitely be in order. And it needs to encompass, like Mitch said, there's limited crimes in it now that are covered. It needs to cover a wider range of cases so that those issues can be addressed.
We're just about out of time. I just wanted to conclude with a quick question for all three of you. And Mr. Krause, you started to answer this, or you addressed this in part. You said that you were going to run in 2006, and then it turned into an appointed position, and so you withdrew from that campaign. Have you either applied or run any other time?
No, I've not applied. I find the appointment system to be very political, and I'm a non-political individual. I'm not part of the establishment. I don't have friends in high places, and I realized that I would not get the appointment. And so I put my efforts into my family, running my business, my law practice, and making the time right that I can run to serve the citizens of this circuit.
Okay, Ms. Stacy.
I've never run or sought an appointment before. I want to be elected by the people because I think when the people choose, they typically get it right.
Okay, and Ms. Goerner.
I have sought an appointment some years ago. I think I've sought an appointment more than once, and it is a very political process, and I do not have the political connections necessary for an appointment. This is my first time running in an election. I've never worked on a campaign. I've never done anything political other than vote. So this is all very, very new to me, and so this has definitely been an eye-opening experience. I think that there's a lot of politics in the elections process, and it shouldn't be about politics. It should be about qualifications, character, integrity, and experience. And I'm running because it's the only other way that I think that I can advance my desire to be a judge.
All right, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all for coming in today. We appreciate it.